So Jason, little bit about my organization. So as you know, Millennium Mams believes in continuous learning, and we have been investing seriously for the past 27 years, thanks to the tireless efforts of our mentors, Mr. Vishnu Dhanuka and Mr. Sanjay Bhuvania. Factory meeting the CEOs, and of course, inviting luminaries like you as our guests of honor. We have also invested in ourselves by honing our talents through theater, yoga, Shivani, and of course, Gita classes. Sahyog is our philanthropic arm, and I would like to start the session by saluting the mams and the real soldiers who have selflessly and efficiently taken charge of distributing essential supplies to the very remote corners of Bengal in these very, very challenging and trying times. So I would like to start by, a small video as a matter. It's a gesture, to salute the real soldiers who have been working for more than a month now. So just a second, I would like to share the screen.
As you bring that up, I just want to wish everyone the health and happiness and safety that this is trying times for all of us. I know India especially is under strict lockdown. I mean, we have lockdown here, but nothing like has been implemented in India. So I hope everybody is doing well and surviving through these challenging times.
Yes,
and your family as well, because it is scary and it's trying, but we're kind of all in this together globally, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I would like to start with.
वहां से भी आवाज नहीं आ रही नहीं वहीं से तो आवाज नहीं आ रही नहीं 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 कहाँ कैसे आता है ये सच में ऐसा लगता है ना कभी कभी बुढ़ा गए हैं आज के जमाने के होके भी नहीं फोन में साइलेंट पे होने से क्या मतलब हाँ सब कुछ काम करते हैं हाँ देख लो पेपर में देख लो
So this was
Thank you for sharing that, Rachna.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jason, and special mention to Pooja, who's tirelessly working, to make this happen. And this is what, this is a small bit which we have contributed to the remote areas of Bengal. Yes, Jason, would you like to comment?
Yeah, so maybe I'll just start out quickly introducing myself. Obviously, I met some of you when you were out here in the Bay Area, but it's great to be able to speak with a larger number tonight. So my name is Jason Martin. I run professional services for Google Cloud, and I've been here for just over 4 years, helping Google Cloud build out its professional services organization, which works with our largest customers to help them implement Google's technologies and help them migrate to the cloud, which has been a great place to work because I get to see all the hard problems out there that we're working with some of our biggest customers. And we've got operations, around the world. I've obviously got a team in India and team pretty much in every major country. Before Google, I've mostly been in the startup scene. So, here in the Bay Area, I had a few short stints to Australia, a brief time in Tokyo. I will say that when I lived in Australia, that was the time when I grew to appreciate cricket. I don't know how many cricket fans there are on the call, but back in when I was there in late '90s, Australia was good, and then I went back in 2009, and India was killing them. So I definitely I'm probably one of the few Americans that actually understands the sport of cricket. So mostly I've been in the startup world, which has been great to see, companies here in the Bay Area that start with an idea and then work hard to change the world with that idea and those technologies. Probably the most successful company I was with that was a startup was a company called VMware that when I joined was about 100 people. When I left, it was about 10,000, with multi-billion dollars of revenue. But another interesting fact is I actually studied artificial intelligence at Stanford. So I got my undergrad degree at Stanford and majored in AI, which back in the time was more of an academic major. So I really felt like what I was studying wasn't very useful in the world, right? It was more interesting, but not something I used when I started working. So when I joined Google 4 years ago, it was kind of eye-opening to me to see like how far AI had come, and Google was obviously one of the key companies driving the commercialization of AI. And what seemed like, impossible to do 20 years ago, and it was even kind of a bad word. People joked about how disappointing AI was as a discipline, had become the force of change that was really driving most of the innovation. Google calls itself an AI first company. And the amount of AI technology that's in most of our solutions is amazing. So I'll probably talk a little bit more today on kind of that area, but obviously happy to take questions in any area. I do have, I should have talked about this before, Rachna, but I do have some slides I can show. You think I can share my screen?
Yes, of course, you can share.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, let me bring it up here. Hold on one second.
So in the meantime, I would like to mention about Jason that Jason, something gone wrong. Okay.
That was my screen sharing.
Yeah. Okay. You can, please.
Sorry, you probably see yourself. Let's go. Let's do that.
Yeah. It's okay. Yeah, please.
Can you see this?
Yes.
Excellent. Did you want to say anything else, Rachna, before I continue?
No, it's okay. You can continue. Then I'll.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So I thought it would, because I know there's probably people on the call that AI seems kind of, what is it? How big is it? How does it work? Right? What's the it just seems so inaccessible and kind of complex. So I thought I would just kind of paint a picture on both cloud and AI to give you some basic understanding of what it's doing for technology and for the industries we work in. So first off, there's if you look at the history of the world, right, there's various points where a technology arrives that just has such a profound impact on the world and society and the economies. And there's some common threads between those technologies, and that's things like the printing press or electricity or flying. And they're basically technologies that not only open up new markets, but they create new demand. They also stimulate that demand. So it affects both the supply side and the demand side of the economy. And that's certainly the case with all the ones listed here. Well, the new one I think is cloud, right? What's cloud is doing for the world and all the key business models it's enabling and all the change and transformation that it's created in our core industry, right? So let me just talk a little bit about why that's the case, right? So if you look at the cloud-enabled technology transformations, it's phenomenal. Like the stuff that we're doing, you couldn't do in the old model, right? So if you had to, you think about the old, the last 30 years of technology, most of the innovation has occurred in the enterprise space, right? It's the banks and the hospitals and these large manufacturers that were driving technology innovation. With Google, it started to flip around. Google and
Please keep yourselves on mute. Everyone, please. There's some disturbance.
It's nice to know you have the same challenge we all have, which is managing mute. Maybe we need some AI technology for that. Google and some of these large companies have started to really drive innovation for the consumer side, and now that's powering the enterprise and industrial side. So, and you look at things like the collaborative workspace, or high performance analytics, predictive maintenance. That's all being enabled by cloud. You look at things like self-driving cars, right, which is obviously still in its infancy, but the ability to design a car that can drive on its own is predicated on being able to take in massive amounts of data. And process that data, build the machine learning models that you just can't do in the old world, where you had to build your own data centers and you had to process the vast amounts of data kind of on individual computers. Now it can all be done through a utility in the cloud. So let me just talk a little about what's driving that. One is we're continuing on this exponential trend, right? So computers are 4 billion times more powerful today than they were in 1960. So 4 billion. But if you look at Moore's law, which is continuing, we're looking at in 18 months they'll be 8 billion times more powerful, right? So just in a short amount of time, we'll continue to see this growth, and that's obviously helping drive the innovation. We have a new class of compute called, at Google, we call them TPUs, tensor processing units. They've got their special silicon designed to build machine learning models, and they speed up, rather than using traditional GPUs or CPUs, they speed up the training of a machine model by orders of magnitude, right? And we're on our 3rd generation of TPUs now at Google, with the 4th generation coming next year. But one of the things that allows us to do is to train massive models with massive amounts of data more efficiently. So they're more efficient from a power perspective, and they're much faster. To take in all the voice data, for instance, to train speech models, or to take in all the image data to train image recognition, that's all being driven by TPUs. And now we've actually in cloud externalized that, so our customers are able to train specialized silicon to do machine learning modeling. And obviously, you probably heard last year some of the advances that Google made around quantum computing. This obviously has a ways to go before it's commercialized, but it has the potential to have multiple orders of magnitude step function advantages over existing compute models. And I'm not going to go into quantum computing today, because that'll probably take too long to talk through. But I do want to talk through AI and how to think about AI for those of you who are not clear on kind of what's happening in this space. In the old world, and computing used to be, you'd have a set of input and you'd have an algorithm, and that would produce your output. So, your algorithm might be, I'm going to add in, the sales from all my stores, and the data is the sales from all the stores. The algorithm is, the addition of all that data, and that the output is, well, how much revenue did you generate, right? So input plus algorithm generates your output. Very simply, what AI does is it turns that around. You basically take your input and your output, and it generates an algorithm, right? So rather than coming up with the algorithm yourself, the machine learning model is your algorithm, and it's built and refined from using your input and your output. So the first big area where this occurred, and Fei Li, who was at Google for a while, she's a Stanford professor and one of the pioneers in AI. She initially did this at scale for the first time to show what was powerful around image analysis, right? So you have all these images on the internet of cats and dogs, right? Or images of everything, basically. And if you labeled those images and you said, this is a cat, this is a dog, this is an elephant, right? And you have all the images labeled, you feed that into the machine learning model. And just like a human, it learns. So it says, okay, looking at that image, I can tell that I know it's a cat. Looking at this image, I know it's a dog. And after you look at enough images that are labeled, you can feed it a new image and it'll be able to tell you what that image is, right? So you have the input and the output. Image is the input. The output is it a cat or a dog? You have those two things together and you build up the algorithm. So to give you an example of that, that is hopefully easy to understand, is if I gave you this spreadsheet that would said, okay, I have a house that's 1,000 square feet and the price is $100,000. By the way, this is definitely not a Bay Area example. It's not a Palo Alto example because these are too cheap. If I gave you this and said you had a 1,000 square foot house, it costs $100,000. If you have a 3,000 square foot house, it costs $300,000. And I came to you and I said, well, here's a 5,000 square foot house. You would probably be able to tell me what the predicted price would be, right? It would be $500,000. It's a very easy, linear relationship between the square foot and the price of the house. Now, if I gave you this data and I said, okay, there's square foot, there's a crime index, there's the school rating for that house, and these are the prices, you might find it a little harder to calculate a new house, what the predicted price would be, right? So this is what machine learning does, is it takes more data, more complex data, and it gives you the algorithm to do the prediction of the house price, right? So you can imagine this is somewhat hard to do. If I said, oh, you have a 5,000 square foot house with a crime index of 70, a school rating of 7, what's the predicted price? Much harder to come up with that without using machine learning. Well, what machine learning does, it can take information that's got 50 variables, right, and actually come up with an algorithm. So that's the basics of what machine learning does. The areas that it's primarily used, here's four of the key areas that it's used. Recommendation, so predicting the price of a house, recommending a product for you based on other products you've purchased in the past, guessing the remaining life of a machine, a manufacturing machine. So that's one area. Perception is another area. So looking for patterns, right? Diagnosing the pathology, detecting spam, detecting a security situation, right? So the first example would be, okay, if I gave you, a bunch of radiology pictures, you could, the machine learning model can pick out which ones might have cancer or not, right? So that would be perception. Segmentation, segmenting customers and organizing folders, doing document analysis and figuring out, which ones are similar to each other. So this is another class of machine learning. Prediction would be forecasting sales, optimizing resources. So given what's happened to date, where might you end up on your sales forecast, or where might a stock price go? That's the other class of machine learning. So I'll give you a couple examples that we're doing this at Google, that our Google Cloud that I've seen. In the manufacturing sector, we have some clients that have used us, and my team has helped them develop models to do quality assurance for food. Right, there's one of the major rice producers in Japan. They wanted to automate the review of the rice as it comes in to understand the quality, so they could appropriately separate it and price it to their premium, to their less premium, or reject it, right? And they were using image recognition essentially to do that food quality assurance. Another one in the farming space, we had a customer in Malaysia who wanted to predict where there were issues with a disease and problems with their banana plantations, right, and their palm oil plantations, and they were using satellite photos and machine learning to analyze from the satellite photos where there might be issues across vast acres of farmland. So that's another example using simple machine learning. It was actually very quick. One of the misnomers of machine learning and AI is that it's very difficult to set up. It's actually not. If you have the data and you have the means of gathering the data, it's actually, and you know what you're looking for and the results, it's actually very, very easy to build a model. Retail, right? We worked with a number of customers to help design, and now we've actually productized this so we can implement it very quickly, design product recommendations and purchasing. So, this is something that you would see within, obviously Amazon does this, but most retailers now are doing this where, based on your prior purchasing or what other customers have purchased, you can make recommendations. Banking sector, right? So spending and savings behaviors. We have a number of banks that are using machine learning to understand the behaviors of the consumer customers so they can design the right offers for them to maximize the value that they're providing their clients, but also maximize the customer retention. Another example in the banking sector that we're working on with some of the major global banks is anti money laundering, right? So it's called AML. And it's actually quite a complex space that the banks were required to go do for compliance reasons, and they're trying to understand where a transaction might be fraud or might be money laundering versus an accurate one. The problem with most of their approaches today is they have a lot of false positives, so they need massive amounts of people that look at the false positives and to analyze if they're real or not. Well, with machine learning and using some of the stuff we've learned inside of Google, right? We've got Google Pay, our own payments platform, that we've been able to analyze transactions and understand which ones are suspicious or not. We're able to go work with the banks to build better anti-money laundering machine learning models. And then healthcare is another one that there's a lot of innovation on. Healthcare monitoring search is an area that we've worked on. Another one I mentioned earlier is the pathology one, to understand doing radiology exams and to really automate that for customers. Right now, most of what's happening there is augmenting existing processes to make people more effective, but progressively, I think, as the regulations start to advance, you'll see that being done in an automated fashion. So those are four kind of examples. And I'll just end with, data is the new currency, right? One of the things that I think all the big companies are worried about is getting a small company, whether it's from Silicon Valley or Bangalore, or wherever around the world, changing their industry, right? Coming up with a new model and new technology that changes the industry. Well, one of the advantages that the big companies have, one of the advantages that they don't have, is they're generally slow to innovate and slow to move. But one of the advantages that they do have, and we're helping them unlock, is they have all the data, right? So to build these machine learning models, what you need is the data. You need the transaction history. You need all the radiology images. You need the diagnostics data from your manufacturing systems, right? And with that data, you can build models much more accurately and much faster than a startup can. So that's the area that we're working with big customers on, is to make sure they're unlocking the value of all the data they have, and then helping them collect new data as well. So that's what I wanted to cover at a high level here. Let me just turn off the presentation.
Thank you, Jason, for the wonderful presentation. It's really mind-boggling, and data is the new currency. Wow. So what I have understood, that it's artificial intelligence is the future, and machine learning, how it's turning to deep learning. Cloud computing is changing the businesses worldwide. And whether it is manufacturing, retail, banking, or healthcare, everything is going to be, transformed according to artificial intelligence. And before we proceed for the question answer session, Jason, and I introduce my colleague to you, I would like to mention one thing to my members, that Jason has been a host par excellence when we visited the Google Cloud Sunnyvale campus last year, and where we were treated to a mouth-watering lunch followed by a power-packed presentation at Enter the Dragon, the conference room at Google Cloud. And the memories are as fresh as ever. Dhanuka, sir?
We cannot forget, because you have offered us the vegetarian lunch also.
Yes, vegetarian lunch. That too. Yeah, that too at Sunnyvale campus. Absolutely.
That's very kind of you to say. Well, we basically treated you like we do our engineers here, right? We feed them well.
No, Jason, it really makes me
feel happy and productive.
And my colleague Namita is here. Namita was also a part of the contingent, 29 of us. Namita?
Good morning, Jason.
Am I right?
Yes, I second all of that.
It's good to see you. Good to see you again.
Thank you for coming in today,
Namita,
Jason.
Yeah, Namita, please, if you could take a few questions from a member.
Yes. Evolution is a fact, and you're at the cutting edge of evolution at Google, Jason. So are you ready to bat?
I'm ready to bat. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll see if I can do bat. I'll be more like an India cricket and less like Australia cricket.
Then you'll do just fine.
Then you'll do justice.
Just absolutely. So I'm going to get in Beena Matre from Bangalore and Neha Prem Rajka. They actually have the same question, but because Beena came in first, I'll give her the opportunity. Beena? Beena, are you there?
Yes. Yes, right here.
Yeah. You can
go ahead, Beena.
Yeah.
We can hear you. Yeah.
Hello.
You can read the question.
Yeah. So how do you find the right balance between collection of data and privacy concerns regarding usage of the data?
That is a great question, and one we take extremely seriously. I would say one of the things that I didn't understand before I joined Google, because you kind of, as an outsider, right, I just assumed Google was gathering everything and was being cavalier with its data because they're an ads business, right? They want to use the data to drive more ads revenue. And when I got inside of Google, I was like, wow, they are so conservative in terms of how they use the data and collect the data. So there's a bunch of things that we do to make sure that we don't abuse the data. Number one, typically all the data is anonymized, right? So you don't know who it's from, right? So you don't need to know the patient's name to understand to build your machine learning model, right? You can build the models without knowing who all, you might have 1,000, and I'm giving you an example from maybe our Google Health environment where they have all this data to build machine learning models, but all of it's anonymized. You don't know who it is. So that's one way we do it. There's a lot of compliance and process issues. So just to give you an example in my area, my contracts, when I go out and work with a client of ours, prevent me from touching, seeing, working with PII, personal information. So by default, we cannot touch it. We cannot see it. There's a few cases where customers literally beg us to help them. So they're like, we can't give it to you in a way that's not personal. So for you to help us, you need to be able to access this data. And we very pretty much, I can think in 4 years I've been there, I can count on one hand how many times we've said, okay, we will work with your data that has personal information, but we want to put these protections in place. So we make some exceptions here and there, but it's very rare. We pretty much do not want to see people's personal data. Obviously and I think there was a question that popped up I saw in video that said, how do you protect the cloud, the systems in the cloud. So that also helps us protect personal information and data as well. So I'll answer both questions at once, which is, we have a lot of technologies to keep the data safe. So every piece of data that's stored in Google Cloud is encrypted. So it's all encrypted. Everything that's sent across the wire. So if we're going to send information from one data center to another, or from our cloud to your computer, it's all encrypted in motion. So if anyone gets the data, they can't do anything with it, right? If they break into a system, they can't do anything with it because it's all encrypted. So those are some of the ways we protect personal information and protect people's data.
Thank you, Jason. I'd like to bring Sunanda from Kolkata in. Sunanda?
Hi, Jason. Actually, my question is more dealing with India. How do you see AI shaping up in India? Which are the sectors which will adopt it faster than others? Because India is at two extremes. You have one section which is very advanced. You also have people who, they want to join the labor force. There is a fear that artificial intelligence will eat into their job opportunities. So how do you see this shaping up in India?
Well, there's kind of two answers for that, because to be honest, while India's local economy and industries is as you described, they're also at the heart of all the global innovation, because every large company I work with, everyone, not a single one, doesn't have an operation in India. In fact, most of them have most of the developers in India. So, from one perspective, India is participating already in the innovation that's driving the global change, because most of these multinationals, all the big banks we work with, they have operations in India. So the people that we're working with on their machine learning models, as I mentioned earlier, the anti-money laundering, they're some of the developers are in India. So we're already working with them on this in India. I think as far as the local industries, I think some of it will be, it'll be similar to what we're seeing elsewhere. So industries with large amounts of data and value in that data will move quickly. So financial services is the most obvious one. I think it's more regulated, but I think India has the opportunity to probably push the envelope on the healthcare system. In fact, one of the, like automating radiology exams and things like that. I mean, I think when I was in Australia, if I remember correctly, they were outsourcing some of the radiology readings to people in India, doctors in India. So I could see that being an area. There's a friend of mine who is working in a startup in this space, and the founders, even though the startup's being done here, the founders are from India, so they're doing the startup here. But obviously, there's, that's a sector I think that can do very well. So I think it'll mirror some of what's going on globally. And the other one is farming, right? The farming sector, as I understand from Rachna, is quite large in India, and it's actually not hard to take some of these technologies and make them useful for, because obviously there's satellite photos available for India just like there is anywhere else, and what we did for that company in Malaysia is equally applicable to a company in India for sure. So those are some areas.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Jason. Jyoti has a question on work from home, and somebody called iPad also had it, but since you don't have a name, I'm giving Jyoti the chance.
It was me, Namita. Hi, Jason.
Go ahead, Jyoti.
I'll go on, Namita. Yeah, hi, Jason. Yeah. We had met last year during this time. I remember very vividly. And thank you for being such a good host. So, Jason, my question is regarding cloud services. Since, work from home is now a new normal. So how do you think these services are going to increase, and how does Google Cloud plan to increase its market share in the cloud service segment?
That is a great question. I'm glad you asked that, because I was actually going to cover that in my talk in terms of what I see coming. So now you set me up perfectly with this to tell you my predictions for the future based on what I'm seeing right now. So first of all, the transition to, as you can imagine, I have hundreds and hundreds of engagements, consulting engagements going on globally right now. And when the lockdown hit, we were super nervous about what impact that would have on our business. We have some areas that definitely are impacted, like travel, hotels. You can imagine industries like that have really shut down quickly. But we have some industries where there's even more demand and there's more expectations that we're going to deliver things more quickly and respond to their needs. So some areas that are obvious there are things like online retail, entertainment. A lot of people are watching movies and playing games and things like that. So we work with the media and entertainment sector quite a bit. We work with the retail quite a bit. New York Times, their traffic went up over 20-fold. One of the larger Canadian retailers that we work with, they are mostly bricks and mortar. They mostly have physical stores, but they have, they compete against Amazon and others online, but it wasn't a big part of their business. That business for them grew over 30x within a couple weeks. So they needed more capacity. They needed better systems. So our team was working with them quite closely. Public sector, right? You think about the impact on public sector. So government websites, just to get information, but also to process things like here in the US, unemployment claims. We have the unemployment systems. You actually happen to watch some of the video. Governor Cuomo, who is the governor for New York, he's been quite vocal and does daily press conferences. He's talked about Google Cloud, Google helping them solve this unemployment problem.
Yeah,
that was my team.
Okay, that's nice.
So,
very nice.
Very exciting. Yeah. So how we helped them was we basically changed the system that took the claim so they can scale to much bigger than they're able to. And then we're on the back end, we're helping modernize their mainframe. So we're working to make that more efficient. That'll take much longer, but we've now decoupled the data collection from the data processing so they can be more efficient on that. And then that's being replicated in a bunch of other states as well. So it's so exciting to be able to not only help our customers, but honestly being given the opportunity to help our communities is even more exciting. So I was very proud of the team, and they were working like 20-hour days, solving this problem. And very, very excited to see. So what does that mean long term? Well, let me draw parallels to what I saw in 2008, 2009 with the global financial crisis. At that time, I was with VMware, which is not a household name, but it's a big technology company, right? It really changed the way compute was being done in the data center for large companies. It made companies more efficient. It was a new compute model to virtualize a physical piece of hardware so that you can run more than one operating system on a single computer. That it was hard for people to get their heads around, and it definitely changed the way the IT processes were done and development processes were done. So it was hard for companies to implement. Typically, when you have a huge downturn, companies pull back from change and innovation. They pull back from spending more money on licenses and CapEx. Well, what we saw at VMware was we had customers leaning in. They were spending more because VMware is a technology that drove efficiency and it drove savings. And in times of trouble, companies really focus on the initiatives that save them money and make them more efficient. So that same thing's going to happen in cloud, and we're seeing it already. We have a bunch of customers that are looking to move from on-prem into the cloud and do that more aggressively because they're trying to drive more cost savings. So, it really makes the board level and the CEO level laser focused on the key initiatives that drive the most benefit. And cloud is one of those initiatives. So I think we'll see more large out of data center exits, whatever you want to call it, initiatives that'll accelerate here because of COVID. I forgot to mention all the work we did to work remotely. So this is another change I think was we're doing so much more now, all these, so of the hundreds of engagements that we were doing, only about less than 5%, a few percent were delayed or put on hold. About 15% slowed down, but the rest of them, the rest of the 80+% proceeded at pace. So and that was transitioning. We even had the large engagements, like we're doing an engagement with British Telecom in London, that we kicked off that engagement 100% remotely. And we put a lot of effort into our tools and our processes to make sure that we're able to do distributed remote engagement with our customers to make them more effective. And I can tell you, I've been on a lot of, well, not Zoom meetings. I've been on some Zoom meetings personally, but for work, obviously we do Hangouts with Google Cloud. I've been on a lot of meetings with customers that are, that we just transitioned, instead of face-to-face, it's remote. The reality is, for most of these large enterprises we work with, the teams are distributed anyway. So there was always a component of remote. And now it's just everybody's remote. So, I think the hardest thing, so the technologies enabled us, the culture at Google's enabled us to transition to remote very easily. But the hardest thing, I think, is on the people, where a lot of people have young kids at home, or maybe their parents that they have to take care of. So that's been the one part that's been a little bit harder, but the technologies enabled us to make a seamless transition. So I think hopefully what we see is less air travel, less train travel, car travel, because that has a wear and tear. I've always been in the consulting industry, and that's the one thing that really impacts people's work-life balance, is all the travel. And so maybe the positive on this is people be more willing to do remote meetings, and in effect, it'll make us more effective. So generally, I see a silver lining in COVID, and I think we're going to see a rapid acceleration of business for Google Cloud, and we're going to see, hopefully, more effectiveness at working remotely.
Thank you so much, Jason.
Jason,
Sure,
Abhi has a question on hotel industry and AI. Abhi, can you just tell us where you're from, which city?
Hey, hi, I'm from Kolkata. My full name is Abhilasha, and I'm a food consultant. And my question is here, that how do you think the hotels and the food and beverage industries can use artificial intelligence during the post-COVID change? Because now the whole industry has, with the social distancing coming in, the basics of the hospitality industry has changed. So how do you think the AI can help us in this particular sector?
Thank you, Abhilashi. Thank you for the question. I'm certainly not an expert in that field, and I don't think I've seen data points yet on our engagements that would allow me to give you an answer that is based on real-world data yet. So I'm just going to speculate here, and obviously, I just want to be clear on that caveat. This is a bit more speculation. I think that you'll probably see travel companies be a lot more targeted in their offers and how they work with their customers. And there's a lot of work AI can do around that. The ability to really make sure you're targeting your offer to the right customer was already something we were seeing before, and I think that'll just accelerate as people try to make sure they're, just competition breeds excellence, right? And I think you'll see a lot more travel companies being very focused on the offers they provide their customers and tailoring them to the individual needs. Efficiency, obviously there's gonna be a lot more investment paid on efficiency. I already mentioned, travel companies moving more quickly out of the data center. So we are seeing that with some of the travel companies we work with that are, in fact, I was on a call yesterday. So maybe I do have some actual data points on this with one of the major online hotel aggregators that resell hotel space. They have stuff in Google Cloud. They have stuff on Amazon, AWS. They have stuff on premise. And the ask from them was to accelerate, working with my team, accelerate the move from AWS and the move from on-prem into Google Cloud, because they can save more money that way. So that's clearly, it's not exciting. It's kind of a boring thing to do. It's not AI, but it is. Oh, nice picture. I get the Golden Gate behind you here. it is obviously something that I think, the travel companies will focus on. We're actually working with Sabre as well right now, which is one of my bigger engagements. I mean, it's a 10-year agreement, so COVID's not going to impact us over the long haul over 10 years. I mean, it'll change some things over 10 years, but as far as the engagement, it's a very long-term one. We're working very closely with them to drive some efficiencies, again, out of data center, out of mainframe, to modernize their stack. So that's one area. On the AI space, yeah, the only thing I can think of is just the personalization. I think that trend's going to accelerate in the travel space. So
thank you so much.
Thank you for the question.
Jason, I have Pooja Dhandania who has a question. Pooja?
Hi, Jason. I'd like to know that Reliance Jio of India has invested heavily in 5G technology. So how do you think that can compete with a giant like, Huawei of China?
Sorry, and you were asking about the move to 5G?
Yes. So
Yes.
a company called Reliance Jio in India has invested a lot in this technology, the 5G technology, and so has China's Huawei. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. So how do you think
You are.
the two can compete with each other?
Yeah, so Google's not directly involved in 5G, but we are enabling it through a couple things. Certainly in cloud, one of the things that we're focused on, we're working with some of the major telcos around the world to help them drive efficiency in their systems and their data centers. We are working quite a bit with our call center AI technologies, CCAI we call it, call center AI. And that's not just applying to telcos, but it's actually applying to any vertical. Like we have work going on with travel, with financial services, with medical, but some of the bigger ones are actually in the telco space. So that's exciting. And not directly related to 5G, but it's the deep engagements we're doing with some of these big telcos. But I would say the area that we're focused on is helping them move to the edge. There's a lot more edge computing going on. And we have some technologies, Anthos, that enable that move to the edge. And there's some other areas where Google obviously is participating, and there's some intersection between our consumer technologies and our business engagements in cloud. And that would be an area like Stadia, right? I don't think it's in India yet, but Stadia was Google's launch into the gaming industry. So, it's pretty revolutionary because it basically, and I'll say this because I've grown up a gamer. My kids are gamers. Like, I actually play computer games, believe it or not, as a way to release some stress. And, back when I was younger, I had the most powerful PC to have the beautiful rendered video games that I would play on my PC. But as I had kids and I got older, I just looked for convenience and I bought an Xbox, right? You can buy a PlayStation, Xbox, so I'd play a game on an Xbox, but I missed the quality of the PC because the graphics were so much better. But I just don't want to pay that money to buy a PC just to play a game. And nowadays, all my computer's on a Pixelbook, which doesn't have a strong graphics card. It's not built for gaming, it's built for work. So, but what Stadia does is it basically moves the rendering and all the gaming complexity into the cloud, and all it's doing is pushing the display down to your device. So, and you buy a video controller, and you have a Chromecast on your TV, and the two of them are connected in the cloud. So you basically get the quality of a high-end PC from a video and rendering perspective at the cost and complexity of a console. So it's super cheap. And you can, the advantage is because you're not bringing data down to the device, you're just pushing the video down. You can have much better games. So that's an area that we're working with. It's driving. You think about 5G again, the ability to go and play a game off your phone, right? You can't do that with LTE, right? There's so much data being pushed out. So that's an area where we're helping our telco partners, take advantage of things like Stadia to drive. It's one of the use cases that drive the value of 5G. And then, as I said, we're helping them with their edge computing so that they can drive more efficiency in how they're pushing compute out to the edge, closer to the consumer, to drive those services that'll bring value into 5G.
Okay, thank you.
Jason, Anuradha has a question. Anuradha, are you there? I'll just read out her question. Anuradha, are you there? I'll just read out her question. It says, how is AI solving the COVID problem?
So I mentioned well, that actually wasn't AI per se, but I mentioned the example of the state of New York and helping with the unemployment. That's not using AI, but there are some areas we are. So another area that my team's been working with a number of customers directly on is this call center technology I talked about. So, being able to automate some of the calls, right? So when someone calls in and they have a question about, I don't know, their bill, deferring their bill because they don't have the money to pay, or it's call into the medical system, ask questions. We can use that voice technology to automate the call and make it much more efficient. Most of these large companies, I don't know what it's like in India, but in the US, I know most of these large companies are getting overrun in their call centers because there's so many people that need help. So that's an area where we're working with a bunch of companies implementing the call center technology. Another area, my team in Spain actually helped build an application, and we did this, just for free, right? It wasn't actually engaging with a particular customer, but they helped provide some contract tracing technologies to the local community there in Spain. So that's another area where, that wasn't using AI per se, but it was definitely using cloud technologies. Obviously, there's work being done, and this is less close to my team, so I'm not quite as familiar with it, but there's work being done to help researchers research the COVID virus. And, we worked with the National Institute of Health to help push a bunch of data up to the cloud to help researchers be more effective in analyzing that data. We actually, I think right now we have a community within Google Cloud called Kaggle, which is basically a competition website for AI researchers. And people present problems in the community, and anyone from around the world can go get the data and then try to solve the problem, build their own machine learning model. And I know there was some competitions that were put in place to help drive some COVID-related research. So that's another area where AI is helping. And I'm sure there's lots more within Google that I just don't know about yet.
So we're out of time, Jason. So
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you actually hit a century, so your batting is fantastic.
Thank you. I know how hard that is. That's up there in Tendulkar level, or Bradman. I don't know. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Jason, just a second. I would like to thank you for the insightful session and for giving us your valuable time and answering all our questions patiently. Jason, we do hope that Google Cloud continues to raise the bar and transform the fortunes of companies worldwide. I was lucky to be a part of the 29-member team who visited Google Cloud's SFO facility last year, and we call it sheer coincidence or divine intervention. We had the VP of Google Cloud with us today here for a Zoom session. Jason, do you believe that it's either cloud up or drizzle out? Is it the situation? Either we have to cloud up or we should drizzle out.
I think so. No, I think
yes. Even we think so.
One of the core values at Google is respect the opportunity. And I think the opportunity that's presented to us here in terms of the challenges with COVID and society, like technology can make a difference. And I firmly believe, I've seen it. I firmly believe we can help out, and we're going to continue to do so.